Greetings and salutations, my minions. Kunic here, back with yet another RPG horror story for you today. And in today's video, we have a 7-part epic by a local community member from our Discord. Link is in the description if you didn't know it existed. And yeah, just a heads up, it does get a little political, so if that triggers you, just, be aware of that. And real quick before we begin the story, if you like the videos that I make and you're not yet subscribed, please consider doing so to be notified of my future videos, along with hitting that bell notification icon to be further notified. Alright, let's roll for initiative and begin the story. The worst player I've ever encountered. Part 1, and it all started with a Nazi. Around 3 years ago, I received an invite from a friend on Discord for an Elder Scrolls-themed tabletop server. As my first love in all things RPG is the Elder Scrolls, I dived right in. The DM, who I'll call Nazi, had a little introductions channel where we could put our time zones. One other player put theirs in, and it was Russian. Nazi apparently liked this, and praised the other player for coming from there, and how well Russia was doing in terms of governing themselves politically. I don't have enough knowledge about politics to comment, so I stayed out of it, when the Russian player said it was a living hell. In the meantime, Nazi had decided to add a new channel, #Politiken, which he specifically said was politics in German, so as to trigger as many libtards as possible. That channel got muted as fast as possible, and I went to bed as it was late. The next day, half the server had left. Out of sheer morbid curiosity, I peeked inside the #Politiken channel and saw that Nazi had started it off. Transgender people are mentally ill. Change my mind. Alright then, perfect introduction to a new DM. The Russian player had tried to do so, in the process revealing they were trans. He'd unleashed a tirade of hate upon her, and she blocked him and left, as did half the server. Scrolling through was like watching a train wreck. It was disgusting to watch, but I just could not look away. Nazi admitted to admiring fascism, apart from the genocide bit, admitted he brought a knife to his high school, he was in the US, and owned a copy of the Anarchist's Cookbook. For when the time is right. Reaching the end was like coming out of a war zone. I left the server immediately and checked my Discord friend list. A person from that server added me, and we got to talking. They stayed in contact with a few cool folk from there, and the storyline Nazi presented was interesting. Days after the events of the Oblivion Crisis ended, the remnants of the Mythic Dawn, still hoping for victory, we decided we'd steal the concept, make another server, and add these cool folks into it. It started out that the Nazi would be the least of our problems. Part 2. Pity Parties and Violating Thrones. This is where distinct characters start showing themselves. They are as follows. Edgy. Not actually edgy in real life, but an amazing writer who first played a neutral evil, Vampire Lord Cleric of Molag Bal, whose storyline involved him becoming the big bad evil guy in a really well done way. Later played a 16-year-old Redguard artificer obsessed with a Dormere. Elf, a mildly autistic woman, Relevant, who played a chaotic neutral dark elf assassin of the Dark Brotherhood, trying to find out what happened to the Cyrodiil branch in case she lost her family again. Bard, a teenager, also Relevant, who played a wandering Bosmer bard traumatized by the recent Oblivion Crisis. Also an in-real-life musician who composed a few guitar pieces inspired by a few characters. Artist. The Reachman conjurer who fled High Rock and the Reach of Skyrim after being raised in a cult of Nimira. In-real-life artist that did the portraits of everyone's characters. The problem. First played a Breton wizard, but the main problem started when she played the dark seducer, lawful evil noble cleric of Sheogorath, the Russian trans woman who was attacked by the Nazi from the first server, who, it's important to mention, did not deserve it, and the biggest problem from here on. Where we left off, we had set up a new server and we were deciding how things were going to go. As an official Elder Scrolls tabletop rules and systems weren't out yet, we decided to give it a go making one of our own. Well, the problem did. She came up with a complex stat system involving adding amounts of points to a stat, and that the amount you added corresponded to a chart which dictated the actual amount of points you got as your score. Elf was having difficulty understanding the system. She'd explained all of her previous sheets had been from 4d6s and joked about being bad at maths. so she asked the Problem to help. The Problem, to give her credit, did try explaining it to Elf. When Elf got it wrong, the Problem didn't take it too well. "Ugh, I'm sorry for making everybody do math." Elf jumped in, trying to explain that it wasn't the Problem's fault, and that she'd always had problems with numbers. "Whatever, I could have made it easier. I'm just not good at anything. I'm useless." It took at least an hour of Elf trying to comfort and explain to the Problem that Elf was actually the problem in the situation. Elf agreed to keep the Problem's system and admitted, after the Problem leaving, that she kept quiet about a lot of things so as not to upset the Problem again, even though she was having difficulties. With a minor drama resolved, the Problem worked with Edgy to have his vampire lord, Big Bad Evil Guy, kill off her Breton as a further drive for the plot, whilst enabling her to switch characters to the Dark Seducer cleric. All of us were okay with this. What we were not okay with was her Dark Seducer. In out-of-character chat, the Problem had been open about being a lesbian. Literally everyone in the party was some form of LGBT+, so nobody cared. However, the Problem made a few comments that made us uncomfortable. "Men are evil, LOL. I was looking up the word for fear of men, but that's just common sense. I found a band called that, though. Your son, of Cold Harbor character, can't exist as men can't be violated." In lore, Dark Seducers live in a strictly matriarchal society, with males being canonically weaker in every stat, and females are canonically misandrist, referring to males as worms. As Bard was a minor, we had a very strict fade to black rule regarding anything sexual, with the most detail being said being, e.g., he sleeps with the priestess of Debella. With all of these things in mind, we expected the Problem's character to be heavily misandrist. What we did not expect was for her to be sitting on a throne made up of chained up, naked male Dark Seducers in various states of drugged/mind-controlled submission. While talking, she picked random victims on her throne to kick, punch, and stomp on the testicles of, and ended her little introduction by grabbing one by the hair and forcing him to do a fade to black situation. To this day, we regret speaking out about what is now referred to as the violated throne. Okay. But, at the time, we were terrified of setting the Problem off on a self-hating rant, like she had done before at Elf. If we had only spoken out then, we would have avoided much worse. Part 3. One law for her, one law for us. Life pro tip: ignoring something in the hope it will go away never works. Elf accidentally set her off via something else, however. Elf had stuck with the same character throughout, her Dunmer Dark Elf Assassin, and was very much attached to her. Years before, she'd spent weeks writing a 60,000-word fanfiction set after the events of Skyrim, complete with her hand-drawn cover for her first printed manuscript. Elf knew her Dunmer's backstory and personality inside out, and tried to stay in character as much as possible during sessions. A key part of her Dunmer's backstory was that her mother had been a devout cleric of the Tribunal, and actively hunted worshippers and servants of the House of Troubles. The Problem's Dark Seducer was a cleric of one of the members of the House of Troubles, Sheogorath. Elf's character was thus extremely distrustful of the Problems. The Problem really did not like this. She had her character assume the role of the party leader, dictating to petulant, delusional children. Elf's adult assassin and Edgy's artificer, and Bard's character, a arrogant upstart wham, where the party was going and what they were doing. Elf's character naturally resisted, being raised to distrust the servants of her kind's evil gods. Out of nowhere, Elf got a message from Artist. Artist explained that she was really worried about the Problem, as she thinks nobody likes her or her character. Elf agreed to tone it down a little, but explained that her character would always be somewhat distrustful of the Problems. Artist accepted this, but then Elf got a message directly from the Problem. "Why do you hate my character so much?" Elf explained that she didn't personally hate her character, but that her Dunmer was naturally distrustful of servants of the House of Troubles, and so she wouldn't exactly just skip along merrily behind her, bowing to her every whim. Plus, in character, the problem had threatened to kill 2 of her Dark family members, when Elf's Dunmer's bond was protecting her Dark family of assassins. You know how you put so much work into your Dunmer. I did the same with my Dark Seducer. It's honestly really triggering to have you reject her so bad. I'm rejected, enough as it is, and you making it worse is really triggering. Is there a type of D&D trope for players that just constantly get triggered? If not, I think we have a candidate. Elf apologized, saying she didn't know, and she'd let her Dunmer be more accepting of her Dark Seducer. Glad we had this discussion. Besides, I'm the one DMing this arc, so you would have to make another character or be left behind. Fortunately, the problem eventually got so fed up with the Dark Seducer she put so much work into, and decided to have her DMPC executed for some reason none of us have ever worked out. The first Elder Scrolls campaign was officially dropped, and the problem decided she'd DM a full Elder Scrolls campaign from start to finish. It never got past the first 2 sessions. Part 4. Not all triggers are created equal. So, the problem had decided she was going to DM her own campaign, where we were prisoners dumped on a survival island of sorts. Elf played an Altmer Enchanter/Artificer, born without magic and convicted of fraud for disguising her magical ability with enchantments. Edgy played an arrogant House Redoran Dunmer, noble loyal to House Redoran, and House Redoran only. Bard played an evil sorcerer seeking revenge against the Mages Guild for casting him out. Artist played an Altmer Druid slave who murdered her mistress. And the problem, of course, had a DMPC, a Redguard fighter rogue multiclass who could conjure Daedra, was respected by them, and had a pet anarchist Golden Saint in an amulet. Canonically, Golden Saints are as misandrist as their Dark Seducer cousins, but are also notoriously stuck up and arrogant with it. The start of the drama began before the session had even started. This was during Pride, and the problem decided to have yet another pity party. Shame we can't have Pride here. Too many cops, not enough people to kill them. Only good cop is a dead cop after all. Most of us stayed out of it. Elf only piped up when the problem decided to really let loose. There's no legitimate reason to call the cops. Doing so only supports them, and makes you as bad as them. And all alive cops are bad cops. Elf decided she'd had enough. She admitted something she later said never wanted to admit, but felt like the problem was targeting her. To be fair, I only called the cops once when I was 12, when I was violated. The problem went blissfully quiet until the date of the next session, where her Redguard DMPC and pet Golden Saint decided to lead the party inland a bit to set up camp. Elf's character, who had been accustomed to luxury and was petrified of being abandoned to die, tried to stay back out of the way while the problem's DMPC tried to coax her backstory of committing mass fraud out of her. That is like so cool. Come, teach me how to con people, the DMPC said, grabbing Elf's Altmer by her boob. As she'd pat her soldier, but she is small, and Elf's Altmer is tall. Elf's Altmer didn't respond, and just let the DMPC hang on, for about 20 minutes in-game time, including dragging her by the boob to introduce her as the cool mass fraudster to other party members. The entire time, Elf didn't have her character respond, nor did she respond much at all. Elf later mentioned she had actually had a minor panic attack, but didn't want to say anything unless she upset the problem and just made things worse. Reminder, the problem knew Elf was an in-real-life victim and did this anyway, and that's a legitimate reason to trigger someone, unlike what was happening before. Let's continue. It's 100% malice, as the problem had her DMPC character say to Elves, "Don't worry, we're on a team now," and jiggled the boob she was holding onto. Elf did in private, as she was scared of upsetting the problem. The The problem had frequently commented about suicidal ideations, and had mentioned past suicide attempts. At some point later, details are fuzzy, Problem put a message in the general chat. "I'm gonna do something really stupid. If I don't respond in the next few hours, assume I'm gone. I'm sorry." She got to hour 3 before Bard asked what was going on. "I took a crap ton of tranquilizers and hoped I'd die." Naturally, this freaked everyone out. Elf, Bard, and Edgy were on, and all 3 actively tried convincing her to puke them up over the course of several hours. The Problem returned to the next day, having walked to her grandparents to get seen by them. Unsurprisingly, the entire campaign had thus been tainted, and was dropped. Artist left at this point for personal reasons, and the remaining party members at some point decided to try 5e D&D. Part 5. Emotional manipulation isn't problematic. So, Edgy, Elf, Bard, and the Problem decided to move on to 5th edition D&D, with 2 new players being included. Cleric, a friend of Edgy's, with multiple years of experience, and Barbarian, Elf's cousin, whom had never played any kind of tabletop before. Bard had actually been homebrewing a world since he was a preteen, and we were going to be playing in it for the first time. The Problem, however, was the problem. In private chats, Bard and the Problem had become close as they both had similar mental issues and were both reasonably far left, the Problem being much further so. Bard had also only recently turned 18, no longer being a minor, and the Problem decided it was okay to use him as a private emotional punching bag. For example, "I'm feeling angry today, so I'm going to take it out on you." Proceeds to rant and verbally abuse Bard for several posts in private messages. Bard was extremely proud of his homebrew, and had right to be. The Problem, however, shat on it. "Anything a straight cis man creates has no value. Too problematic. Shouldn't be allowed to create anything, really. I'm pretty sure this person uses things in their daily life created by straight guys. I mean, like, let's be frank, most computers which they're playing this game on are... Okay, let's continue. Even over text, the rest of us could sense Bard deflate a little, but they pressed on and helped out with character creation. Barbarian played a chaotic good, noble human fighter for his first character, eager to escape the constraints of high society and explore the world for himself. Cleric played a neutral good trickery cleric, as a kind of holy Robin Hood, using his abilities to overthrow the evil and give their power to the good. Elf played a neutral evil / selfish half-elf noble who had murdered her arranged husband after 50 years of marriage, and was trying to repay her debt to the court and get their kids out. The Problem played a furbolg barbarian exiled from her tribe as pathless, and trying to find her own path. Edgy was on a huge eldritch horror kick after the recent release of the Call of Cthulhu video game, and wanted to play a Kuatoa Gulak, desperate to return to the deep dark of the ocean. The Problem was having none of it. "Your character is problematic. Lovecraft was a massive racist." Now, there's no denying that's true. Lovecraft himself was a massive racist. However, Edgy had put in no actual references to Lovecraft himself, nor any sort of racist references. It's also important to mention Edgy is a POC, and the Problem is white. Side note, Bard isn't actually a Chisset man. They hadn't come out yet. The Problem didn't know this. The Problem themselves is white, also fawned over Elf, who literally made jokes about being totally the stereotypical white girl. Pumpkin spice is nice, can't help it. All the party except Edgy and Bard are white, and stayed well out of it. Bard allowed Edgy's Gulak and set a date for the session. Naturally, we were all excited and discussed D&D stuff leading up to it. Cleric even commissioned an artist to draw his character and put it in the group, alongside Elf, who drew her own portrait for the sheet. Unfortunately, the Problem was first to see them. "He looks like he's about to call me a slur," to Cleric's character. "Damn, girl can drown me anytime she likes," to Elf's character. Elf had intentionally made her character the equivalent of her late 50s, publicly to try playing an older character, and privately as she didn't want a repeat of the problem groping her young Altmer from the previous game. The entire time before the session, the problem had been asking Bard a ton of questions regarding the lore of two rivaling factions, which her background would connect her to one. Which one has the most cute girls in it? I want the one with the most cute girls. Later, she'd asked Elf's character if she was attracted to women, and that's why she murdered her husband. No, she murdered him because she felt her life had been wasted in an arranged marriage. He was trying to set up an arranged marriage for their eldest daughter, and she didn't want her daughter going through what she did. Is her daughter attracted to women? No, she's attracted to books, magic, and getting her younger siblings to shut the hell up and stop trying to kill each other as she's trying to read. Elf kinda came up with the whole backstories for her character's 5 kids in case her first one died. Wizard/mom friend, eldest daughter, overprotective white knight, fighter, eldest son, soon-to-be celestial warlock, middle daughter missing, the twin she never met. Wannabe charming rogue who thinks he's a ladies' man, but is 14 and therefore a dumbass by nature middle son. And the 8-year-old baby of the family, who still begs his mother for another bedtime song as he likes the magic sounds. Elf ignored the problem, as another discussion had taken over the chat. Cleric was far more experienced with Pathfinder, and people were thinking about doing another game in Pathfinder at some point, to try it out. The discussion turned onto what games and systems we would like to try at some point as a group, and most of us were enthused. All except the problem. Call of Cthulhu could be fun to try. The sanity mechanic seems like it could be fun. Call of Cthulhu is problematic. Could try Vampire the Masquerade. I like the idea of a total lunatic thinking he's an edgelord. Vampire the Masquerade is problematic. Okay, as Cyberpunk 2077 should really be out soon, I really want to try some Cyberpunk. I want biotic stuff. Cyberpunk is really problematic. Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be disgusting, as CD Projekt Red and The Witcher are ducking whitewashed crap. Geralt of Rivia, more like Geralt of Rivervale. This became really common in general chat. If any of us mentioned we were interested or excited for, or liked something, the first thing she'd do was crap on it. That Skyrim mod, The Forgotten City, is being made a standalone game. Would be really cool if other mods did the same. Vigilant is practically Dark Souls already, but imagine something like Project AHO. Project AHO is problematic, what with the slavery aspect. Reminder, we all came originally for an Elder Scrolls tabletop. All of us are familiar with it. All of us played the 3 major Elder Scrolls games. It is impossible to complete Morrowind's main quest without buying a literal slave. She also shat on any suggestion we had. Barbarian knew how to set up a music bot, and we had ideas for adding background music in. Fantasy stuff, video game stuff. Stuff like Hans Zimmer or Jeremy Soule. Jeremy Soule is a violator. His music is problematic. Pretty much anything we were interested in, liked, or wanted to contribute with was shat on as being problematic. The new players, I think, were the kick we needed to realize the level of bullcrap we were put through. I think they definitely helped with the eventual end of the problem. Part 6. Stop talking about killing dogs. By the second session of Bard's Homebrew campaign, most of us were at the point where we'd had enough of her. What finally got us to say no wasn't the Violation Throne, the perving on Elf's female characters, or her crapping on what we were interested in. No, what got us was the problem would not stop talking about wanting to murder all dogs. Elf and Bard both had dogs. Edgy had previously had a dog, Barbarian was hoping to get a dog, and every single time any of us mentioned them, she would butt in with what she called a hot take. Hot take! Pet cats! Shoot dogs! Hot take! All dogs are criminals! Shoot them! Hot take! DDD! Dogs deserve death! Hot take! All dogs go to heaven? All dogs ducking die! Hot take! No dog deserves life! Jeez, what the heck did she have with dogs? Every single ducking time, It was hitting Elf particularly hard as she'd had to have her 19-year-old cat, whom she had since she was in preschool, put down during the time. The problem was around, and animal death was upsetting to her. Elf had been gaslit into submission enough by the problem to keep quiet. Edgy, however, had not. Okay, can you please stop going on about killing dogs? It's really upsetting to all of us, and we've had enough. The problem naturally didn't like this. Have you ever been chased by a pack of vile dogs? Your argument is invalid. Yes, actually. Strays are common here. Same, they're common here too, added Bard. Well, I still think all dogs should ducking die. And it's okay to be wrong. Your judgment is just continually questionable, seeing as you hate dogs, so please stop. The problem didn't stop. By that point, Elf and Bard had learned to ignore anything she said, and confronting her only made the problems worse. Towards the end, between sessions, Bard ended up taking a school trip abroad to Elf's home country, where they managed to meet in real life. Elf is actually as short as she says, by the way, and looks as young as she says. My teacher thought she was like 16 to 17. Natural proficiency to deception and disguise self? Nerd. No, you! Can't help that I pass for lawful good. From there, the conversation divulged into alignments and our in-real-life alignments. The problem wanted to know what we thought hers was. Lawful or maybe neutral evil. We all knew the reasons why we chose that, and I'm sure everyone else can see why too. The problem, however, couldn't. She pestered us for ages in chat asking why, even when the conversation had very clearly moved on, including photoshopping her hair onto the Bernie Sanders I am once again asking meme, and DMing Elf asking why, which Elf ignored. It's doubtful she ever worked out why, and if she did, she wouldn't change. Her final actions were what broke us, and the trash finally took itself out. Part 7. The End. By this point, the vast majority of us had become very close, almost best friends in some cases. We told each other about everything, including Bard opening up about thinking they had a mental illness that affected the way they saw themselves. Naturally, the problem jumped in. I have dysphoria, Bard. Cool. That doesn't mean I might have it any less. For once, the problem didn't jump in with some angsty whine session. Instead, not long after, they left. She left, but not without causing a crapstorm in her wake. Elf was first to see the DM sent to her from the problem, saying goodbye and at the end saying, "Don't tell the others, especially Bard. I don't want them to start any drama." Having been there for the problem's suicide attempt, Elf completely ignored her and told everybody in the group the problem was gone, and if they had gotten a DM off her, as she was worried. Edgy and Bard both had. Edgy's DM didn't have anything notable about it, but Bard's was a spout of pure vitriol. The problem accused Bard of gaslighting her since they met, of mentally abusing her into staying in the group when she had no longer wanted to. Bard was nothing but an abusive piece of crap, and she expected an apology, but it still wouldn't undo the abuse he put her through. To say that Bard was devastated was an understatement. Due to time zones, them and Problem were often up together, talking about stuff, and they became close with her. Sadly, this often left Bard as the Problem's emotional punching bag, where she would randomly decide, "I'm angry today, so I'm going to take it out on you," and spew abuse at him that she wanted to get out of her system. Or sometimes, Bard and Edgy would end up staying awake until 5 a.m. their time, talking her out of multiple suicide attempts or depressive episodes. Elf and Edgy both grouped up to support Bard, but the problem wasn't done yet. The problem and Bard had each other's phone number, and the problem decided to text him. "If you're not going to apologize, lose my number." Bard took it hard, and even harder still when yet again the problem texted him with a 3-page rant about him being an abusive, gaslighting piece of crap for ignoring her. Bard responded and the problem blocked him, Edgy and Elf both focused on supporting Bard, but then Edgy discovered her Twitter. The problem liked to tweet. A lot. Including tweeting things about the party that none of us knew were there. My D&D party is all kink-shaming me. Ugh. Sex-positive friends only next time. Which was tweeted when none of us knew that she had any sort of kink, and only found out when she tweeted about it much later. Imagine condemning certain kinks, and then being like, I'm a very sex-positive person. No, Jack, you're a goddamn bootlicker. Bootlickers always get what bootlickers deserve. Which was tweeted about a week after Elf admitted she had called the cops on the person who violated her. Does looking through your abuser's Twitter count as digital self-harm? So, my friends consider me lawful evil? What? It went on for literal years back, over hundreds and hundreds of tweets. To us, that was the final straw. Elf admitted she didn't want the problem back, and how she was scared of her, how she was walking on eggshells around her. Edgy agreed and didn't like talking around her in case anything he said was misconstrued. Bard ended up taking a break from DMing their homebrew campaign, instead playing an Elf's own homebrew she started up, inviting in another friend of hers and barbarians. When Christmas came, Elf made custom nerd boxes of sweets, dice, a mini, and some other small presents for everyone in the group. Nobody has really seen hide nor hair of the problem since, and to be honest, we're better off that way. End of the end, and in post. Well, that was certainly a trip. About halfway through the story, I was really leaning towards trying to get the problem some help. They very clearly have some mental issues with the multiple suicide attempts and the fact that they're constantly blaming others, and just in general, everything screams that they need help. But at the end of the day, they have to also want the help. And instead of trying to receive it, which this group clearly did, especially with the suicide attempt, she just continued to push everyone away and try to belittle them. And that's just no good. So I still think that they need help, but at the same time, I'm glad that they're no longer a part of this group, because they were just bringing the mood of everyone else down. And this group sounds like an absolute joy to be with. They all are friendly with one another. I mean, the whole Christmas thing at the end was super sweet. I'm hoping that this group just sticks around through and through, because they just seem like such a good group together. And I'm also very glad that once they had two other people join, one who was brand new to the game and tabletops in general, and then someone else who was a little bit experienced, they were really able to piece out that the problem was really, truly a problem and had to be dealt with. And thankfully, nothing really blew up as a result of that, because that could just completely have imploded the group. I think it was better to end the way it did, with the problem just leaving. Even though them berating the Bard like they did is not cool, it's far better than having a huge argument in voice or chat with the entire group and just everyone chiming in and just being a bloodbath. Like, that's no good. And yeah, if any of the players from this are listening in, and I know there's at least one of you because you submitted it to the Discord, you guys rock. There's nothing that you need to do differently, I think, in this situation. And really, as best you can, comfort the Bard. Seems like they've taken everything the hardest. If this is still an issue now, I don't know how long ago this was. I know it was sometime before Cyberpunk 2077, so like a year ago, but if they're still, down about this whole situation, shower them with love. They deserve it. Anyhow, that wraps up this story, and the person who actually submitted this realized that this will be my 100th video on YouTube. Crazy. I didn't think I would actually get here. But here we are, 100 videos. And so I'd like to say thank you to everyone that stuck around this entire time, and here's to another 100 videos. And again, if you're not yet subscribed, please consider doing so to be notified of those upcoming 100 videos whenever I get around to them. Now, while you wait for my future videos, here are a few related videos that you can watch in the meantime.